Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you on this. Summer has arrived here in mid-April. And fellas, you know what that means, right? It's transfer season. Everyone's transferring everywhere. There's literally no players left on the men's basketball roster, and even fewer left on women. They're not dealing with any transfers. But I don't know. Do you guys have any eligibility left? Like they need some bodies.
Come on, Jeff. Just let it out. Let out all of your angst, all of your panic. I'm not here to have fun and play games.
It's been an emotional couple weeks for Murph. It's been a couple emotional weeks for Jeff there. You know, he lost his beloved Alliance Football League. He's the only person in America shocked that the league is still not in existence. And now he's panicking because there's players leaving basketball.
Firmly planted on my Go Light panic button. I'm ready to do it. We are blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are SB Nation's home for UCF sports, news, analysis, and all kinds of fun stuff. We can be found at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret and at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Follow us each individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez, Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. And you can subscribe to our podcast on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, wherever it is fine podcasts are given away for free. Okay, lots to talk about. We'll catch up on men's basketball and the personnel news that's going on around there, of which Johnny Dawkins is not a part, surprisingly enough. We will preview UCF Hall of Fame, which will be taking place on Friday. We've got a little earlier this week, we had some interviews that we posted. We've got Eric Lopez got an interview with Allison Trella, formerly Allison Kime, who will be the second ever inductee from UCF Softball in the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame, catching up with her. And we'll catch up on baseball, softball, and football spring game coming up as well. We'll spend probably about 30 seconds on the spring game because I hate freaking spring football, and I know you guys do too. But
I got big news on the spring football game that you guys are going to want to tune in for, though.
I got big news for you too. It should not be called a football game because it's not a football game. But anyway, let's talk about men's basketball and what has actually turned out to be a busy news day. We're recording this on Wednesday, April the 10th, and news came down in the afternoon that Terrell Allen for UCF, who still has, will be searching for a graduate transfer. And this is in addition to a couple guys who've already left. Chase McSpadden obviously has transferred over to Stetson. Word also came down that Miles Douglas is seeking a transfer. Now, with regards to Terrell and Miles, not necessarily that doesn't necessarily mean that they are transferring.
Miles is leaving.
Miles is definitely leaving. Okay, but maybe not Terrell. He might pull a Matt Williams. This is in addition to Aubrey Dawkins declaring for the NBA draft, which was not unexpected on Monday. And the problem, which Eric Lopez doesn't seem to fully understand at the moment, is it's not the players who are leaving. It's the fact that there are players leaving that I think is getting a lot of fans into panic mode. I'm not ready to fully panic yet.
I don't know. It looked different on social media. You were about to jump off a ledge on social media. Listen. If it turns out to be true that all these guys are leaving, I mean, especially, with Terrell Allen, who's expected to be a pretty solid contributor next year. Is he an All-American?
He doesn't have to be an All-American to be a contributor. Eric Lopez, of course. By the way, we don't have any of those guys left. In fact, we didn't have any All-Americans last year at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just checking. I just wanted to make sure because the way everybody's reacting is like we lost multiple lottery picks. Give me a break. Come on.
Well,
it's college basketball. I know this is a crazy concept. When you play 4 years, you tend to graduate. You have to move on, first of all. So that's why we're losing the majority.
Well, Allen hasn't played 4 years.
No, but he's a grad transfer. He's got his degree.
Right, but he hasn't played 4 years. He still has a year of eligibility at UCF.
Correct.
He can get his master's degree at UCF. A lot of players that we know do.
Or he could also seek out other options like many college athletes are doing now under the transfer portal, which they have the right to do because that's the way it is now. I mean, that's free agency. Like this idea that somehow, oh my God, a player is going to go in the transfer portal. This is going to be the norm now in college athletics. And players have the right to move on. If you just saw the national title game, one of Texas Tech's most important players, Mooney, was a grad transfer out of South Dakota. So what's going to happen here is programs like the South Dakotas, the UCF, you name them, you're going to see players that will transfer and might go as a grad transfer because a marquee program might be interested in them. And you know what? UCF might also grab some of their own transfers. But that's college basketball now in a nutshell. And for anybody to act shocked, like, oh my God, like we all knew and go to Black and Gold Banneret. Forget me, forget Jeff. We're both nuts. The only one that has any common sense really in the community of Orlando is Brian Murphy. He wrote about this in detail. No one should be surprised, right, Murph? This was going to be a rebuild year. You mentioned it in your article. That's why this past year was so critical to make the NCAA tournament and to have the success they did because everybody knew that this following year was going to be a rebuild.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, losing BJ Taylor and Taco Fall and Aubrey Dawkins and Chad Brown and Deion Griffin, there was a ton. So, I mean, regardless of whether or not Terrell Allen was staying or leaving, UCF was going to take a massive step back next year. All this sort of does, and again, we should reiterate that Terrell Allen may not be going anywhere. He is only seeking to he is only seeking his options to be a graduate transfer somewhere. So he may come back, but with him on this team or off this team, next year was going to be a big time rebuilding year for UCF, where they're going to compete to basically stay among the top half in the AAC with or without Terrell Allen. Now, he is an important player. He got significantly better on offense this year. He's a very good defensive guard. He passes the ball well. He's kind of developed an offensive game in the paint that he feels comfortable with. He's an okay three-point shooter at times. So he's gotten better. I mean, he would be a nice player to have for the next season. But to think that all of a sudden this team is doomed or that the program is ruined or what's happening, what's going on, to panic because Terrell Allen might leave along with Miles Douglas, Chance McSpadden, that is inconsequential because regardless of those guys being on this team or off this team, UCF is probably not going to finish in the top half of the AAC next year because it's a full rebuild.
All right. Murph, I'm gonna play devil's advocate and put on my panicking hat fan here, and I want you to try and answer these questions as concisely as possible. All right, I'm looking at the regular rotation, guys who played 28 games or more for UCF, and the only guys who are coming back are Colin Smith, at least as of right now. Colin Smith at 8.0 points a game. If Terrell leaves, let's say he does leave. And then Cesar DeJesus at 3.4 points per game and Frank Burtz at 3.1 points per game. Who is going to lead this team?
Don't know. I really don't. I mean, they don't have a BJ Taylor. And if BJ left, with BJ gone, I think the leadership role probably would have gone to Terrell because he's an experienced guard and in college basketball, you want your guards to be your best players. And so it would make sense. It would fall to him. But if you look at their backcourt with, like Darren Green's a freshman signee. Tony Johnson's a point guard, but he's only verbally committed. You have Burtz and DeJesus. Like, there's no leadership in that backcourt that we know of. Colin Smith's the best player on this team by far. He could be a legitimate star player in this conference as he continues. He's only a junior next year. But this team is thin. It's going to be rough. And we'll see how UCF fills out. I think they have 4 scholarship spots that are open now after, Chase McFadden left and everything else. But we'll see how they fill it out. But it's rough. And that was not concise, but I'm not a very concise person.
Next question for you. Oh my God, does this mean Johnny Dawkins is leaving?
No, because there's only 2 jobs in the high major programs that are open, St. John's and Cincinnati. And I don't think he's
going to Cincinnati. He's going to Cincinnati.
He's going to Cincinnati.
He's pulling a reverse Donnie Jones. He's going
close to a done deal. It's close to a done deal.
That would make no sense for him to go lateral movement to Cincinnati. And no, I don't think he'll be going up to Piscataway. I think you've been to Piscataway more than Johnny Dawkins has, Jeffrey.
Piscataway. No, St. John's is not in Piscataway. Let me tell you.
Oh, that's Rutgers. That's Rutgers. Where's St. John's at?
St. John's is in Jamaica, Queens, baby.
Okay, sorry. I got to change that in my article. So yeah, I got live edit. Article.
There we go.
Live edit. Anyway, so no. But
by the way.
there are only two jobs in the high major realm that are open, and unless he wants to go to one of those 2, he's not going to Cincinnati for damn sure he's not. Unless he wants to go to like Kennesaw State, or one of the lower like ASUN, he's not going anywhere. So no, Johnny Dawkins isn't leaving. Stop it.
Okay. All right. It is a challenge, or it is definitely going to be a challenge. I mean, now Elo, I think that this is really interesting from the perspective of which team is going to be able to rebuild the quickest, men's or women's, because the women's team lost 7 players themselves.
Yeah, but the women is a lot easier. No disrespect, but the talent pool in the women, I mean, it's not as big of a gap as in the men. Like the men, they're going to struggle. I mean, Memphis is going to be really good next year. Houston's going to be really good, and I think South Florida obviously brings a lot of personnel back. Cincinnati's kind of a mystery. Yeah, Wichita State brings back a lot of material back. Yeah. Cincinnati's kind of a mystery now with, let's see who they replace Cronin with. Whereas the women, the talent pool's not that big of a gap. Like, I mean, it's not like, oh my God, we got to, chase down Cincinnati for second place in the American. I mean, it's a very, with the right people coming in as young players, they can easily, I think, replace that. So I think the women's easier from that standpoint than the men. But my thing is, why are people like all of a sudden in shock? Did people just think that this was going to we're going to just, get off the bed and win 20 games every year? I mean, Miami, which is, to me, programs like Miami, Florida State, and UCF, these programs aren't going to make the tournament every year. It's just not you're not a blue blood. As Murph likes to say. I mean, it's just not it. I mean, look at the Pac-12 and a lot of their programs that have more revenue and more resources than a UCF, and they struggle to make the tournament on a consistent basis. So college basketball, to me, is about trying to rebuild a team to where you can make a run with the core of your team probably by your junior year, really, realistically, which is kind of what we saw now with BJ Taylor and Taco. This was a 3-year run that they had. They made the NIT the first year. They had a bunch of injuries that cost them the second year, and they made the tournament the third year. So what I think from a UCF perspective is, first of all, last I checked, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, we better let Murph know because he's going to go on vacation this weekend. But last I checked, the college basketball season doesn't start this weekend, does it, Murph?
It does not. Good thing.
Okay. Oh, okay. So let's figure out how we're going to let's let them fill out the roster. Last I checked, they're not going to forfeit the season. They're not just going to close down the program. They're going to have a roster. Mostly of them are going to be young players, and they're going to take their lumps. There's no question about it. But you hope that they take their lumps and you see potential there that maybe the following year or after that, you could see, hey, this is a group that could lead us to back to the tournament in a couple of years.
Well, I think
sorry, Jeffrey. I just want to say I'm looking at the 2021 season really as maybe like the expectation that this team should be on the rise again. It's going to be at least 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I think also, Eric, that you made the point about how that the fans have this expectation that now that we almost took we expect to be in the tournament every year, kind of like a Cincinnati or a Memphis, or at least be in there more years than not. Now, I agree with you that there's still a lot of infrastructure growth that has to happen before UCF can really consider that. Now they're in the process of building it, and when you have a guy like Johnny Dawkins, who apparently, at least last we heard, is And I want to give credit to our friend Jason Bede over at 247 because he reported that that Johnny Dawkins met with the players this week and gave every indication that he would be sticking around. If you're going to rebuild, then it's good to at least have, like you said, that infrastructure in place of a program that Johnny has spent 3 years building. Whereas if he did leave for, say, Vandy or wherever, that all of a sudden now you're really starting from scratch. But at the very least, that is comforting for me as someone who's more of a smark out there to that he's at least there. I think this would be a lot more difficult if he wasn't. Real quick before we take a break, I wanted to talk about Aubrey Dawkins leaving because I think there have been some mixed reaction to that amongst the fan base. I think this is the right call. I mean, you have to go if you're Aubrey. He's 23. He'll be 24 next month in May. I know he had 1 year of eligibility remaining, but he ain't getting any younger. And in the NBA, it was interesting. I did a little analysis of the Orlando Magic's roster because Brian Gelfand actually asked me, we got into a discussion about how many players in the NBA are, left school early, how many players played 4 years, and how many, were international guys who didn't have any true college experience. If you look at the Orlando Magic's roster, of the 17 players currently on their roster, 11 of them left college with eligibility still remaining. All right. So that tells you how young that the NBA is getting these guys. And I think that doesn't, that doesn't compute necessarily with fans, that it's a lot of rank and file guys who are leaving school with a year to go of their eligibility. And those guys are usually in the 20, 21, 22 years old range. Aubrey's 24. He's got to go. He just came off his best game as a college player. Throw that tape in and send it to every scout out there because he was doing that against one of the best defensive teams in the country with some of the best defenders in the country, and he dropped 32 on Duke like it was going out of style. So I categorically disagree with any fans who are like, too soon, he never should have left. I said this earlier, I selfishly want him to stay another year because I would love to see him do what he did against Duke and Temple in a UCF uniform, but he's got to go. He's got to go. If I was in his shoes, I'd be like, I'm out of here because not only that, he's got his dad who's got all his NBA connections that we already know of. Like, the table is set for him. He'll be fine, right?
I've been saying this for like 4 months. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean,
well, who I'm curious, who actually is like disagrees with the decision, or just selfish fans that just, because we're always selfish, we want our players to stay, right? Is that what it is, or just selfish? I mean, okay, because I mean, the kid's gone through.
No one who's no one who's disagreeing, no one who's saying that Aubrey should stay is looking at it from a non-biased point of view.
Right.
All right. It's just fans being fans. If anybody says, it's too soon, he shouldn't go yet, it's only to fulfill their own self-interest. So, just stop. You gotta go.
Well, yeah, like I said, like of course it would be so cool to get another 30, 35 games of Aubrey Dawkins in a UCF uniform.
There's no guarantee that's the point. I mean,
he already suffered that shoulder injury 2 years ago that cost him the whole season. And that, by the way, I think that's the season that we're all going to look back at and be like, man, that was the one that we missed out on because you had Taco and Jay and Aubrey.
Be thankful for the one you got. Be thankful for the one, because some teams don't get those. Some teams don't even get the season that UCF got this year. Yeah, you could have had 2 of them, but you at least had this one. It was pretty damn good. There were a lot of fun times. You beat some ranked teams. You took Duke to the limit. Like, and at least enjoy that. Don't look at the other stuff.
I want more.
No, I would take the 3 years. Like, I mean, first of all, the NIT run was phenomenal, and nobody expected that. There was a team that was finished near the bottom. And for all these people that are talking about, who do we have on the roster? Well, 2 years ago, Dawkins fought just to have players on his roster. Like, B.J. Taylor and Taco Fall were both injured, only played 1 game together. Dawkins missed the entire year.
He was dressing managers every night.
Right, and somehow they had a winning season. Like, it was, I remember me and Murph were sitting in Amway and we're discussing, boy, that really hurts our NIT chances. Like, with a depleted team, basically, he took a team there to have season. So we've had a heck of a run here. It's the best 3-year run that this program has ever had. This is a program that prior to this year hasn't made the NCAA tournament in 14 years. Like, who the hell are we to talk? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, come on. And for Dawkins, that tape against Duke, the stock's never going to be any higher. Like, you were the best player, according to Mike Krzyzewski. Okay? Mike Krzyzewski's words, and I think a lot of people would agree. He was the best player on the court that's going to feature 3 guys that are going to be probably in the top 5 in the NBA draft this year. Like, he could end up being a second-round pick because of that game alone, and he's healthy. I think Mike Krzyzewski, with his connections in the NBA, will put in good word for him. Obviously, Johnny Dawkins is going to put good word. I think he's got a shot to be a second-round pick. And by the way, think about this: Malcolm Brogdon. That's to me, Draymond Green. These are guys that go in the second round that have good NBA careers. You could have a good NBA career in the second round because what happens is, and you brought it up, Jeff. The first round are guys that have, quote, upside and potential, but they're immature. So what happens is the longer you stay in college, the more your stock drops, and they nitpick your game. So you drop to the second round, and now all of a sudden you become a bargain because you have experience playing basketball, and you can make NBA rosters. And I think for Aubrey, that's going to be the key for him. He's going to have a good combine. He's got to be on the right team. And he gets drafted in the second round, and I think he'll have an opportunity to be on an NBA roster next year and get paid.
Yeah, and the good thing is, like, this is not uncharted territory for him. The table is set, so he'll be fine. By the way, latest NBA Draft.net 2019 mock draft has Aubrey going in the very last pick of the draft to the Milwaukee Bucks, and Taco Fall going 1 pick before him to the Toronto Raptors, which I thought was actually.
I'm more surprised that Taco is popping up in some of these mock drafts because you look
yes and no. I mean, late second round, you could take a flyer on a guy who's
right, and that's all this is. You're taking a flyer on a guy with a bunch of size, and maybe you can expand his offensive game a little bit. But with the NBA moving toward obviously the small ball, up and down pace, it doesn't really fit him. But it's kind of a nice thing to see that he's getting some looks and popping up these mocks.
Right, it's like teams will always gamble on size because you never know. And let's be honest, the guy was tremendous against Zion. He guarded Zion pretty well, and he had a good tournament. His stock went up, and I think I could see a team late in the draft. You know what? Let's take a shot at him. What do we got to lose? It's a second round late pick. Maybe we can develop his game a little bit more, and he could become a guy that kind of become a defensive force for a few minutes off the bench. Worst case scenario, he doesn't work out. You put him in the G League. It's not a bad gamble. In the late second.
Bottom line is these guys are going to have futures in the league. I wish we saw a little bit more love for BJ Taylor, especially after his 3-point contest performance where he finished in second place, but.
He'll be invited to Summer League. I have a
he'll be invited to Summer League, and then we'll see what happens. But I mean, it's another one of those things where, like, how many 6'1" scoring guards are there out there? I mean, there's a gazillion of them, and how do you set yourself apart from the competition? But you never know; he's going to get an opportunity just like all these other guys. So, all right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about UCF Athletics Hall of Fame. It's coming up on Friday. And Eric Lopez's interview with the former Allison Kime, Allison Trella, the second UCF softball player who will be inducted into the UCF Hall of Fame. Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy. This week is Hall of Fame week at UCF. Probably the most well-decorated class that UCF has ever inducted. George O'Leary will be inducted along with two players he coached, in Brandon Marshall and Kevin Smith. We'll also see Drew Butera be inducted. Although I think, is that right? Drew is not going to be able to make it in
Correct.
person.
Drew Butera will not be there in person.
He's got a job.
He's with the Albuquerque Rockies, although no truth to the rumor that, because Brian, he assumed that Murph would be there, that he just didn't want to show up since Murph is everywhere that Drew Butera has been.
Well, that's what happens. Well, I heard that Drew wasn't going to be there, so I said, screw it, I'm going to San Antonio. And that's where I'm going.
Is Albuquerque playing in San Antonio?
No.
But he will not be there, but everybody else in the class will be there.
All right. And that includes Aline Reyes, who we had on a previous show, who's with the Brazilian
national team. Flying in from Europe in the professional league.
Yes. And not only that, we also have Allison Kime. Well, now Allison Trella. She's been married, but
it could be Kime. As I've joked with her husband. It's when she's in the campus, she's Kime. That's who she is.
Yeah,
so, Kime time, baby.
But yeah, it's when she puts the cape on. She's Allison Kime, right? So, and you caught up with her this week, Eric, to sort of reflect on her UCF career, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly Allison Kime certainly had a legendary career at UCF, led them to the 2008 Conference USA Championship, went on to play in the NPF, win the 2009 championship with the Rockford Thunder with a teammate named Kat Osterman and Megan Willis, two well-known players. And I had a chance to talk to Allison about their journey to UCF, which was not an easy journey to get to UCF, and working with Coach Gillespie and the success she had at UCF. Here's my interview with will be newly inducted UCF Athletic Hall of Famer Allison Kime here on the Black and Gold Banneret. And joining me now, she's being inducted into the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame on April 12th. She becomes the second softball player in UCF to be inducted into the school's Hall of Fame, joining Stephanie Best in 2015. Of course, she led UCF to the Conference USA Championship in 2008, still holds numerous records in UCF softball history. And then 10 years ago, hard to believe, she was a part of the Rockford Thunder in winning the NPF championship. I speak of Allison Kime, who joins us now. And so your resume has now been increased.
Pretty excited about that.
How does it feel now that you get to say you're a Hall of Famer? Has it sunk in yet?
No, I don't think it ever will sink it completely in. It's going to UCF. I just wanted to play softball. Never would it have ever crossed my mind that I would have had the opportunity to even be thought of, be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So even to have that my name brought up in that conversation is just an honor in itself.
What was your reaction once you got the phone call officially and you found out you were going to be in the Hall of Fame? What went through your mind?
I asked him, I was like, are you serious? I mean, you hear the other players getting inducted in, and you're like, really? Me? Out of all the people? But I'm really excited. Just it's an honor, like I said, just to be in the same category and just to be in the category of Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're going in at a pretty good, strong class. Kevin Smith, obviously a football star there who set up a lot of rushing records still at UCF. George O'Leary, the longtime head coach at UCF. Brandon Marshall, who's had a lengthy NFL career, as well as the UCF former goalie, Aline Reyes, who's now the national goalie for Brazil and is going to be in the World Cup possibly this summer with the Brazilian national team. That's pretty good company to be had. Drew Butera, who's been in the big leagues, has won a World Series. He's also being inducted. That's a who's who Hall of Fame class you're part of.
I know. I told somebody at work and they thought I was lying to them. And I'm like, why would I lie? I mean, it's going to come out if I don't.
That's funny. What, they didn't believe you? Like the names you were associated? Wow.
Yeah, they didn't believe that I was going to be inducted in with those people. And I'm like, I know, it's a shocker, but it's truthful. I'm like, the press release is coming out soon, so just wait.
Well, and it did come out. And you should have just told them who you are, which is, you set those standards pretty high at UCF. You mentioned UCF. How did it all begin? Tell the audience, how did you end up at UCF? Because that was a fascinating journey as it itself, just getting to UCF.
Yeah, I actually originally committed to University of Tampa and just had a change of heart on how I didn't really want to stay in the Tampa Bay area, so I decommitted from the University of Tampa. And I think Renee or Coach Watson had been watching me and had heard. And so then I started getting recruited, and Shapiro, I think also. So I started getting recruited by them. And then once I got, my offer, which was exactly what I wanted, I committed to UCF. And it was the best decision I ever made. The coaches, the people there, the facilities are top notch. It's like it really is like family being a part of the UCF program. They treat you as though you're someone special, which is great. Like, you don't get that, I feel like, at a lot of other universities as a softball player, but as a softball player at UCF, they totally took care of me like I was like their cream of the crop football player.
Yeah, no, you did. And what was it about Coach Gillespie that stood out to you when you first met her? And then obviously played for her for 3 years. Obviously built the program from scratch. At that point, when you arrived, they were just leaving the ASUN conference and going into Conference USA. So you were a part of the transition.
I just liked how personable Coach was. She sold me on being able to play and actually pitch at UCF, because there's a difference of actually getting recruited by a college. You can play anywhere if you really wanted to. It's just, you can attend any school that you really probably want to. It's just, are you going to play? And that was the biggest thing, is I wanted to play softball somewhere else. Softball is such a short period of time in college. It's 4 years, and I didn't want to spend 4 years sitting on the bench. I wanted to play and contribute to a team. And, she told me it didn't matter what grade I was, that I would get that opportunity. And if I proved myself, I would get the start.
Well, and you did that, and you pitched in 2006, your first year there, injured. You were not healthy. You dealt with adversity right off the bat in your first year.
Yeah, that first year was a struggle. But with anything, once you overcome it, it makes you stronger and better. And that injury definitely did. It made me stronger, made me work harder in the weight room and strengthening every part of my body to make sure that injury didn't happen again.
Did it give you doubts? Did you ever wonder, can I be successful at this level? And when was the turning point when you felt, you know what, I've turned the corner, I could be successful at a very high level here?
Never did I think the injury was going to hurt me from being successful. The biggest learning curve I got was when I went to play softball at Hillsborough Community College. My first year, I remember, you make it 1 through 5. Typically in high school, 1 through 5 is your top hitters. So I was like, in junior college, it's probably the same thing. So I was number 8 or number 9 batter. I was, lollygagging it in there, and the girl hit a home run off me. And I'm like, oh, snap, I actually have to try now. So junior college helped me a lot, because I realized if junior college is this tough, 1 through 9, Division I softball in Florida is going to be that much tougher. So I knew going into it, like if I was successful in community college in the state of Florida, I knew I could probably be pretty successful also. It's just I had to believe in myself and know that I could do it, because I've done it before.
So you get through the 06 year, which was a tough year. It was a transition year. You were injured. And then you get to 07, you're healthy, and you just get on a roll. You just start dominating. You finished that year 3rd in the country in ERA over pitchers that threw a lot of innings. There was one pitcher that threw less innings. But you finished 3rd in the country behind 2 pitchers that is quite well known. Monica Abbott, which was her senior year at Tennessee, ended up winning Player of the Year, and Angela Tincher of Virginia Tech. So that's pretty good company you kept up with. But what was it about 07, your junior year, that it seemed like you just clicked from that point on and you raced through history? You destroyed all the record books that year and moved that year. But what was it about that year that just clicked for everything for you?
I just really worked, like I said, on the off season, getting stronger, in the weight room, so the injuries didn't happen again. I proved to myself when I was in high school, I tore my ACL, that, I could come back stronger, and I did. And from the player I was before I tore my ACL to after, I was significantly better. So I knew if I worked equally as hard from ACL to this injury, I'd be even more successful. So I trained hard in the off season, spent time with Casey, really working on my spins. And I think that's what made the biggest difference, is just focusing on being stronger so I can last the full season. Because obviously, for whatever reason, in 2006, I wasn't very strong because I got hurt.
You mentioned Casey. That's Casey Clark-Zerbe, who was your pitching coach, your personal pitching coach. She's had a lot of great pitchers she's coached over the years. What was it about her that really helped you out in your career and made a big impact?
I mean, everything she did. I mean, we talked the mental game. We talked fundamentals. Anyone that knows a pitcher, we're all pretty mental at times. So having that mental aspect being taught to you by somebody at an elite level like Casey, because Casey played at UCLA. So she played all the top players out in California. So really learning the mental game and not, getting too down on yourself. There's going to be days, she's always taught me, there's going to be days your rice ball may not work, but you need to rely on your drop ball. So that's why you have different pitches, because you don't want to rely on one single pitch all the time, because it's not always going to work every single day. So you have the different tools to help you through each game, because you're not always going to be 100% on each pitch.
Yeah, and you always thought the game through. I remember one start in 2007 you played Marshall in a series, and you dominated the first time you played him on a Saturday, I think it was, and you pitched against them. And the next day it was a swirling wind. The wind was playing havoc. It was going all over the place, and you actually changed your approach that game, where you threw a lot of pitches down on the ground to get ground ball outs. And I remember you told me in the post game you did that because you didn't want, the defense. You knew the defense was going to have a hard time on any pop-up or fly balls today. But talk about thinking the game through from a pitching standpoint, because that was very, I don't know if that happens as much. There's a lot of pitch calling and things like that, but just thinking the game through. And, you were smart enough to realize the weather impact, and you decided to change your game plan based on that.
Yeah, it's just, being one step ahead of everybody else makes you that much better. I think I don't remember that game. It's pretty impressive. You did.
That's my job.
It's just, each game is not going to be the same as the one before. And the perfect example is, I lived on my rise ball a lot. But Houston, they were a rise ball hitting team. So anytime I faced them, I had to throw, they love drop balls. So I had to throw them certain players more rise balls and certain players drop balls, because they loved drop balls or they loved rise balls. So I had to learn each hitter to know which one to throw which pitch to. Otherwise, they were going to hit home runs off me like they did in 2006 when I was hurt, because I was struggling with my wrist injury so much that I wasn't focused on each batter. And I think overcoming that injury made me focus a little bit more on, each hitter and what they want to hit and go to their weakness. I think before I was just in survival mode.
Oh, that's really well. And that was fascinating. And I think Coach Gillespie kind of gave you that freedom, right? Because a lot of coaches wouldn't do that. A lot of coaches kind of, hey, I'm going to call the pitches. It's my way or this way. Maybe they let the pitchers involved in it. But she kind of gave you the freedom to call the game how you would want to call it, right?
She did. I think because I came with the confidence that I wanted to have control over the game, and I can prove to you that I can do just as good as somebody else. I can see the batter in front of me, where the coach off to the side can't see, where the hitter's hands are, how they're standing in the box, if they're up front, if they're in the back. As a pitcher, I can see all of those spots that they're standing in the box. So if they're standing up front, they're going to probably try to catch the rise ball a little bit sooner, depending on which pitch breaks first. My drop balls typically drop later. So I'm going to throw them a rise ball because they'd break a little bit earlier. So if they're standing in the front of the plate, I can try to throw them a rise ball. Whereas if they're standing in the back of the plate, they're going to catch the drop ball in the end, and they're going to swing and miss. Whereas the coach on the side, they can't see all those things that a hitter is doing in the box. And so I came to coach with the confidence that I can call my own game, and I can do just as good, if not better, than whoever else is going to call the game, because I can see the hitters and I can read them up front.
Yeah, and that was kind of the unique relationship you had with her, because she's told me that she trusted you as far as calling the game, and really she felt that her role was because you were so competitive that you would be very hard on yourself if you felt you didn't pitch your best, and she would be the type that would lift your be positive and give you the confidence back up because you would beat yourself up. That's what she would tell me. Talk about that because you were super competitive, and a lot of times you carried that on your own shoulders with the unique pressure that is always when you're a pitcher.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that Coach did too, like she said, I'm extremely tough on myself because I expect a lot. But anytime I would have any struggles, she would just come out there and be like, "You've done this before. Like, I don't know why you're stressing out." Which is true. Like, I've been in those situations before. Casey's put me in those situations. Like, so it was just a matter of just probably reassurance at that point because in the middle of the game, it gets heated. You don't think sometimes, and it is nice for it to be called, a coach to call timeout, so you can clear your head and really think logically through. Like, okay, this next batter, I've struck her out 3 times on a rise ball, so I need to throw a rise ball. But if you're, in the game and just, hit after hit after hit, and you're not stopping the game, you're not going to think who's up to bat, and they've struck 3 times. They have struck out 3 times on rise balls. So just Coach always came out there to just reassure me that I can do it, and she knows that I can do it. That's why I'm still in the game.
And she always wanted you to get into coaching. Did you ever think about going into coaching? Because I know she tried to push you into get into coaching, but you never wanted to do that. But she felt you would have been a great pitching coach in the sport. Why did that ever cross your mind?
Growing up, I never really wanted to be a coach. I did individual lessons, which is fine. But once you get to an elite level, it's just, you really have to be dedicated to it. And I didn't know if I could be that dedicated to something because, eventually I wanted a family and to have children. And I see how much to have a good program like Coach had, she was always away. And I didn't want to be away from my family and my kids. So that I knew early on that, if I wanted kids that I probably wouldn't coach softball because it would take away from my family time.
Your last game of 2007, it was a conference semifinal game against ECU. You went 12 innings, and as I understood it, you were pitching with a heavy fever. Like there was some talk that you might have had to go to the hospital. Do you remember that game and how you were not feeling well? I know that, but yet you overcame that. How serious was that?
I think I had strep throat, and the head football trainer, her name's escaping me, but she was in the softball training room with IV because if we had won, I was going out to pitch another game.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but I was not feeling well. I remember that game. I just remember it because they had the IV in the training room ready to stick a needle in me to get me going for the next game.
I remember that. They told me before the game, Sarah Terra, shout out, who's the SID at the time, they weren't sure you were going to pitch, or at least you didn't think you were going to pitch. And then not only you pitched, or then they thought, well, maybe if she pitches, but they're going to, she ain't going to go the distance. Not only you did. You went 12 innings. So that would have been crazy. You would have pitched the champ. But that was back in the day where the pitchers threw every game, right? It's not like now, and I know you've broadcasted games since, so you've seen it where teams now more go via the staff. So, in fact, some pitchers now marvel, like, really? I got to throw 2 games in a day? Like, they kind of get freaked out a little bit. Is that the biggest change you've seen in the game, that from a pitching standpoint, that now, and I've talked to a lot of coaches, they're even from travel ball on, they don't throw as much as they used to when you were playing?
Oh, 100%. It's totally – you have Florida that has 4 aces on their squad, and that was unheard of. Usually you have 1 to 2, but now each program, SEC, ACC, Pac-10, all those schools have 4 number 1 pitchers on their team, and they all probably pitch 4 innings, and then somebody else comes in. It's that is the biggest. It's mind-boggling to me because I never wanted to be taken out of a game. I wanted to finish the game, and the strep throat at UCF was just one of the times I got sick. I remember playing travel ball. I had a double ear infection, but I went out there and pitched because I wanted to play and I wanted I wanted to be a part of the game. And I don't know if what's changed along the lines, but if I was still playing to this day, I would still want those same things because, like I said, college is so short. Yeah, you have the MPF, but it's like the elite of the elite because there's not very many teams. But I wanted to play because I didn't know if I was going to get drafted into the NPF. So I wanted to play 4 years as well as I could and put my whole heart into it and never leave anything back because that's all some players get is the 4 years in college. And I wanted to make the best of it.
And you did in your senior year, 2008, monster year. You led UCF back into the NCAA tournament, and then you win the Conference USA Championship in Houston. You beat a top 10 ranked Houston team, led by their own All-American pitcher, and Angel Shamblin, who you knew very well, who was also coached by Casey, which brought up a lot of fascinating storylines. I know you both have laughed about this, but from the outside, there was a lot of chatter about the two of you because there was a lot of talk about, do these two even get along? They don't get along. I remember in the press box, I kid you not, I've done now this 12 years. I've never seen a press box stop and then silence than when you came up to the plate against her and when she came up to the plate against you. It was almost like this anticipation, and they were like wondering, like, is she going to throw at her? Like, it really was. It was just really funny, and then funny to learn later on that you two got along. Just describe, though, what that was like to play Houston as good as they were, and then Angel in that rivalry, and then there it is, the biggest stage, Conference USA Championship game, trying to win a title at her place.
Yeah, I mean, it's all such a whirlwind. Beating Houston's such a big deal because they were so great. Angel's so competitive, and so am I. So, I mean, we both wanted to do the very best that we could against each other's team so our team could come out on top. So,
take me through, and what was that feeling like when you got that line drive from Nordstrom? You caught the ball, you threw back to Brianne Javier at first base for the double play, and you just realized you just won the conference title.
I just remember, I mean, it wasn't a hard-hit ball, so I had plenty of time to react. I was like, just in the brief, 2 seconds, I was like, don't mess this throw. It was a different word in there, but don't mess this throw up. And I don't think I shot it over there, probably lobbed it over there because I wanted to make sure, nobody dropped it. I didn't throw it too hard, but I just remember that split second, don't mess this up. You got, this is a double play.
Yeah, and you didn't mess it up. She caught the ball, and next thing you know, you guys are celebrating. You win the title to beat Houston. You go to the regionals in Gainesville. Florida was ranked number 1. They hadn't lost in 40-some games in a row at home. They hadn't lost 36 games in a row, something like that. Going into that regional. But you had a memorable regional. You first played South Florida. I want to ask you, this game kind of gets lost in the shuffle. You're at the plate in the 6th inning. You're down 1, and you're at the plate. There's 2 outs, 2 strikes, a runner on. I think it was Hillary Barrows on base, if I recall. And you drill a triple, a 2-out, 2 RBI triple to get the lead. It was her and Brie, actually, I think were on. You got a 2 RBI triple to get the lead. You would go on to beat South Florida, which obviously is a big rivalry. Do you recall that game and that moment?
Oh, do I recall that? Yeah.
I bet. There you go.
I could have told you I had a triple that game. I mean, I could tell you every single thing that went down against South Florida.
Yeah, I have a feeling you were a little expired every time you played them. You beat them. That was your highlight of your first years. You beat them up in Tampa in 06.
Yeah, to snap our 21-game losing streak. Yeah, I remember that. And I also remember they counted hits that weren't really hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing was just so much fun.
That was kind of wild. Yeah, I mean, you beat South Florida. That was a huge, because at the time they were in separate conferences. They didn't play. In fact, they stopped playing after that 06 game in the regular season. They didn't play in the regular season for 8 years. But obviously you were motivated because that was, you from being from Brandon, Florida. USF was nearby, and you probably felt like a chip on your shoulder playing them, right? Is that all playing a role in when every time you saw them?
No, I just hated South Florida. I could care less that I didn't go to that school. It would actually worked out better. I didn't go to USF. Pete would probably say differently, but my husband. but it worked out better going to UCF. I truly feel like I said before, UCF is such a top-notch program. The people there are great. Not saying that USF, any knocks against them, but, it really felt like home, and I don't think I would have gotten the same experience at USF being so close to my actual home. So
yeah, you beat South Florida in that game, and then you played Florida. We skip ahead to the regional final. You had thrown every game, pretty much every game in that regional. I think there might have been 1 or 2 innings you took off in the Georgia Tech game, an elimination game. And you beat Florida. You ended their long win streak. You pitched 8 shutout innings, and you got the game-winning hit, and I call it a hit. I don't care what Florida called it. It was a game-winning hit. You drove in Tiffany Lane to win that game 1-0 and beat Florida. Describe that moment in that game. What jumps out to you from that game?
I just remember I hit the ball, and I was just – I didn't know. I didn't know where I hit it. I was just like, I got to beat it out. I got to give us a chance. So I don't know if it was the fastest I ever ran, but I was trying to motor down that baseline as quickly as I could. But I got so many text messages after that game saying that I was gypped. That was totally a hit. It was not an error.
Well, I agree. I was there. I trust me. I was definitely a hit. They like, I don't know. I know this is shocking to you, but a lot of times in a lot of different places, they like to score it for the home team, and help out the home team, whether it be ERA or for Stacey Nelson, because that's who you beat was Stacey Nelson, who, that was the thing. You pitched in I call it the golden era of pitching. Part of the reason why you didn't get more national recognition or awards was the pitchers that were around you. We mentioned Tincher and Monica Abbott. But Stacey Nelson was as good as any in the country, among others. What was it like to be in that era? You had Amanda Scarborough at A&M, Megan Gibson. The list goes on and on. It was an impressive list.
Yeah, it was I feel like that was one of the most competitive times in softball because you had so many elite athletes playing all at the same time. You had Olympians, and I think that's going to come back around with the softball being back in the Olympics. You're going to have the Olympians playing, so it's going to bring that that feel back to the game like it was in 2007, 2008 when you had the Olympians playing, because it was a big deal to play against them, and it was a big deal if you got a hit against them. It was a big deal if you did anything against them. So, it was a tough time in softball. The pitchers were great, and those pitchers, like we talked about before, threw 1 through 7 innings. They didn't get pulled in the 4th inning. We pitched game after game after game, and you typically were the ace on the staff, and your second pitcher was decent, but you'd probably have to go in and, relieve them at some point.
Yeah, no, it was, and who did you look up to? Who influenced you to play softball? Do you have a favorite player or somebody you looked up to?
Probably Casey, just because she played at UCLA. She was, Monica Abbott and Kat are, 6'2", and Jenny is 6 foot. So they're very tall women. I'm maybe 5'7", so the height wasn't there for me. Where Casey, she was a little bit shorter than me, but I saw how successful she was at her size. You didn't have to be 6'1" to be successful. You could be 5'4" and still pitch for UCLA and do well. So it was probably Casey, just because she looked like me. We were the same size. We were just the same size. So it's just you're relatable to somebody like that because they did so well.
Well, and that's one of the legacies you have, too, at UCF, because, Mackenzie Audis went to UCF, and one of the reasons why was because a lot of people reminded Mackenzie of you, and that because she was also short, and she had a changeup like you did. And Shelby Turnier, who's obviously the most decorated player at UCF, has been becoming an All-American. She was not the tallest player. So you kind of really kind of opened the doors for a lot of pitchers, moving forward to go to UCF that maybe, quote unquote, weren't tall enough or weren't big enough or didn't have this or whatever to be successful at UCF.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way, but it's great. Just because you're not, 5'10" or above doesn't mean you're not going to be a good, not even pitcher or a good player. You can still do a great job, because your abilities are still there. Just because you're short doesn't make you any less better of a player than somebody else that's 6 foot tall.
You, following your UCF career, you signed on in the NPF with the Rockford Thunder, and Aaron Moore, who was the general manager at the time of the Rockford Thunder. What was it that made you decide to go and play professionally?
I still just wanted to play. It was also a time where the economy had, crashed and there wasn't very many jobs. So it was just an opportunity to extend my playing career and have a little bit more fun and travel for a little bit before I tried to find a job in the tough job market that was going on in 2008.
You played 2 seasons with the Thunder. As I mentioned, you won an MPF championship 10 years ago. 10 years ago this summer. That's going to be the anniversary.
Wow.
Describe it. What do you remember? What jumps out to your memories there from your 2 years there with Rockford?
It was a lot of fun. Met a lot of good people. The competition is definitely tough. You had players of all ages, but you look at Kelly Crutchman. She's in her late 30s, I think, isn't she? Or mid-30s?
Late 30s. Yeah.
She's still crushing it. So just because somebody's 32 years old doesn't mean they're not going to crush a home run off a 22-year-old. So, it just brought a lot of perspectives that women can still do a great job like men and still play longer in their careers in softball. I just learned a lot. It was fun being around people from, the Pac-10 on your team to the SEC. It was great to be around all the different softball players from each, conference.
So give me as you kind of reflect on your career, because you've played with a lot of great players, you've played with great teams. What's the memories that jumps out to you when you kind of look back and, years from now you'll be telling your kids about your career? What are you going to be telling them?
Man, that 2008 conference championship. That was probably one of the coolest things ever in my entire life because, Houston was ranked. Angel's a great pitcher. Their whole team had great hitters. We were just the underdogs. So, that whole experience was just so cool.
That was definitely cool for me. I got to see it all up close there. And now you're going to be the second UCF softball player to be inducted to the Hall of Fame. You're going to be joining Stephanie Best, which is kind of maybe fitting in a lot of ways because you took over the mantle from the program from her when she obviously led UCF to the 2005 A-Sun title, and you played with her when your rookie year in the NPF in 2008. So what does that mean now that you and Steph are in a weird way now reunited on a new team here in the Athletics Hall of Fame?
I'm just honored to any discussion to be bundled in with Stephanie is, such an honor. She's, like Kat, she's such a great person. She loves the game. She will do anything for you as a friend. So it's just such an honor to even have my name along with her name in any category that you bring up.
Well, I think she's excited that you're going to be joining them, I'm sure. April 12th, you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congrats on the Hall of Fame. I look forward to seeing you at the ceremonies there. I'm excited for you. This was like a foregone conclusion. We're just glad it got done here in 2019 instead of waiting a couple extra years, because you never know, right? That's kind of how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
But congrats. And I think a lot of UCF fans certainly are excited that they'll see you that weekend and a lot of softball fans. So thanks for doing this. This was good. It's like old times where we were doing interviews back in the day, except you didn't have an ice pack next to you this time. Should I just ask you about the Rays like old times? Because that was our joke, right? Like just to loosen you up, I would ask you about like Carl Crawford and the Rays. And you were – because you didn't like doing interviews back then. You were not the biggest fan.
No.
I remember that because I literally met you on the air. And I remember because I remember the first time I interviewed you, you had pitched a shutout, but you were not happy because I think it was Dartmouth, and you thought you should have like perfect gamed them or something. And you were ticked. You were ticked at the umpire strike zone, and you weren't happy with your performance. And I remember like, wow, and I'm like thinking, what have I got myself into? But I remember, I remember you interned with the Rays. And you could tell that story. And that's why I kept asking you about the Rays, because you smiled when I brought up the Rays, and you wouldn't stop talking about the Rays. So I'm like, fine, we'll just talk about the Rays if that makes you happy.
Hey, like I told you when we first started this interview, pitchers are mental.
Well, mental, but smart as well. Very smart. I learned a lot from you on that. So I definitely appreciate. In fact, I remember because your husband, Pete, I remember we did a Memphis USF game, and he told me, well, I really enjoyed the broadcast except for the fact you two agreed on too much. And I'm like, agreed a lot? So I remember I watched the tape and I realized, well, of course we agreed on a lot. I pretty much, she influenced all my thinking as far as how softball is supposed to work. Of course we're going to agree. So you influenced me on that.
Oh, great.
But all right, bud. Well, I'll let you go. But congrats again. And thanks for everything you've done for me, and I think for a lot of UCF softball fans and softball fans in general. I think thank you for everything you've done for the sport, and congratulations on this great honor, well-deserved, and we look forward to seeing you there in the hall there and beyond down the road.
Thank you.
There it is, Allison Kime, and my interview with her, and looking forward to seeing her on Friday at the Hall of Fame induction. And obviously we'll have more stuff on blackandgoldbanneret.com, including an interview I had with Kat Osterman about her. I have some of the UCF greats that have chimed in on Allison's thought on getting inducted, and you can actually even listen to more of my interview with Allison on fastpitchnews.com on the In the Circle podcast, where we go into detail about her playing with that Kat Osterman and playing in the pros. So I'm really excited about her getting inducted, and I'm looking Friday night to see her and Sina Line and Kevin and Brandon, and so it'll be fun.
I know. I'm looking forward to it too. Real quick, Eric. All right. Your softball woes. You're Mr. UCF softball. I need you to answer this one real quick for me. We've got Stephanie Best in the UCF Hall of Fame. She was inducted the last induction ceremony we had 4 years ago. First UCF softball player to be so honored. Allison Kime is number 2. Who's going to be number 3?
Well, it depends a lot on how the school will do the Hall of Fame. Are they going to do it every 2 years, every 4 years? I think if they do it every so often, I think it'll probably Natalie Land has a chance, who played from 2009 to 2012. I think the 2 next locks are going to be Mackenzie Otis and Shelby Turnier with their resume. And that'll probably be as early as 2023 where they could be eligible based on the rules.
I'm pulling for Janae Shinoster. I think if Stephanie Best is in, I think Janae needs to be in too. Because if you look at the record books, more often than not, right behind Steph is Janae. and she was a blast to watch play. And the fact that she's also managed to stick around the program as well, helping out, I think has also been fun. So, all right. Hall of Fame is going to be on Friday. It's going to be fun. We're going to have some coverage from that as well. It should be quite the party. Going to be a lot of dignitaries in the room, especially those honoring Coach O'Leary and 2 of his former players for UCF football. So that should be a lot of fun. Stick around. I'll be right back when we return. Catching up on baseball and softball. We'll talk about the spring football game happening on Saturday. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this. And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter if you don't already at UCF_Banneret. And you can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Of course, we will be on blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest, including UCF Baseball and UCF Softball. Let's catch you up on that. First, baseball. The Knights right now, Brian Murphy, in the midst of conference play, they took 2 out of 3 from South Florida over the weekend. It lost on Sunday. Again, this team with these Sunday games, man. I don't understand it. I don't think Coach Lovelady does either. But hey, 2 out of 3 against a conference opponent at a time when they really needed it, especially when you take a look at the standings for UCF baseball. This kind of hard to believe, but but heading into this series, this was a series between the bottom 2 teams in the American right now, and UCF got the 2 out of 3, but now they're at 3-6 in the league. USF at 2-7. ECU is. Well, they're killing everything in sight. They're at 8-1 right now. Tulane right behind them, 4-2, and UConn and Cincinnati knotted at 5-4. But I'll throw the Tony Kornheiser question at you, Murph. Where are we now?
Well, although it didn't seem very positive after Sunday's loss, they've won 4 out of 5, and so I asked Coach Lovelady after their game. They won in Jacksonville 8-2 on Tuesday night, and I asked him, winning 4 out of 5, do you think you guys are playing you're playing your best ball right now? And he thought about it for a little bit and then just said, no, not really, because there's still a lot that this team needs to do right, and there's still a lot of flaws with this team. Some of them, they can't control with injuries. They've got more injuries now with Kyle Kemp, their best reliever on the year, their shutdown closer. He is currently on the mend with a hamstring injury that he suffered in that Sunday loss while covering first base. And then Trevor Holloway, the Sunday starter, still out battling bicep tendonitis. So that they need to get guys healthy still. But the top 4 in the lineup have been solid. It's kind of the same thing I said last week, that the top line has been very good. The rotation's been better with Grant Sherman and Chris Williams turning in back-to-back really solid starts in each of the last 2 weekends. It's just they have nothing on Sunday because Holloway's out. So that Sundays are a complete mystery for right now. And that's you can attribute that with a lot of the losses. And the bottom of the lineup, the 6 through 9 guys, really. Once you get past Ray Alejo and Tyler Osick, Matthew Micah, Dallas Beaver, and possibly Dalton Wingo, there's really someone needs to step up from that 6 through 9 area of the lineup, because right now it's kind of dead. And there's a lot of soft spots in the back half of that lineup. So there's a lot of flaws with this team, but they're winning 4 out of 5. There was a nice win in Jacksonville on Tuesday. Tyler Osick, who had been in a slump, gets a grand slam in the 8th inning that really put a nail in the coffin for UCF. But all that's great. They're undefeated in the midweek. They're now 9-0 midweek, but it's the conference schedule that means things. And This team has not been great in conference. They finally get their conference series win last weekend against USF, and it ends on a sour note. So it doesn't feel like they won the series because it ends on Sunday, in which they lose a game which was really ugly with errors and base running mistakes. And so they need a series that they can exit and feel good about themselves. Hopefully they can get it this weekend against Cincinnati.
And they have to go to Cincinnati to play this series too. And the Bearcats right now are 5-4, tied for 3rd with UConn, although they're 14-17 overall and 8-5 at home. So they're not exactly strong up in Ohio right now. But this is a Cincinnati team that's been up and down for several years here in and interestingly enough, by the way, it was Ted Tom who was coaching Cincinnati last year in their final game in the American Athletic Conference tournament, and is now on UCF staff. But they got the 3 at Cincinnati and then 1 against FAU. And I wanted to shout out to our friend Sam Unger, who did point out to us and Eric Lopez that UCF's RPI right now, interestingly enough, jumped 7 spots in the last week. They were 40th. They jumped up to 33rd at 21-12. Now, Murph, I know you're like, I don't put too much stock in it, but good sign?
I mean, it's fine. It's just like if they don't win, it's not going to be good. If they win, then the RPI is going to be good. Like it's such a stupid statement, but like the RPI will only be good if they win games. And this team needs to win conference series. They can't lose 2 out of 3. They need to continue to build upon. Yep. They need to continue to build upon what they did against USF and carry it over. Otherwise, the RPI is going to drop. I don't really. And again, all of this is like, you need a good RPI for the at-large berth. They're like, okay, but it's so early. We're not even like we're barely scratching the surface of conference season. Like I can't even worry about the RPI because if they don't win games, the RPI is going to drop. So who cares?
Well, we got a month and that was like an Eric Lopez special right there. We got a month and a week left in the regular season. The regular season ends on Saturday, May 18th. Just a couple notes on that RPI. By the way, Cincinnati's 145th. As far as the and St. Peter's, by the way, is 299th. I just want to get that in there. But East Carolina, by the way, 11th. They're the top American team. UConn at 27, followed by UCF at 33. So, and then the next is Houston at 51. So at least that gives you some context there. But Lopez, I don't know. You go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, no, to Murph's point, it doesn't matter what your RPI is if you don't do well in the league. You're not going to get in under 500, for example, in your conference play out of the American. Right. Only the SEC can kind of get away with that, in the ACC to some extent. Baseball America just came out with their NCAA projections, and UCF is one of the, I think, is like the 8th team out, for example. They're not even the first 4 out. They're the next 4 out. And one of the issues a couple things UCF's got against them this year. Number one, this is not a good year in the state of Florida. This is very bizarre. Right now, and I know Murph's saying there's a lot of baseball to go, and there is. But right now, there's a very strong possibility that nobody in the state of Florida will host a regional, which is just crazy to think about that. I mean, you usually can depend on at least one host. Maybe 2 is the norm. This year, it's not the case. Like the Florida wins, which normally would be a win against a top 10 RPI. Florida's in the low 30s right now, RPI. That win against Florida State, which for the last 4 decades prior to this year would be a signature win in your resume, is not a quality win right now. That Florida State's RPI is terrible. I don't know if you have the updated one, Jeff, but that's a big story in college baseball that Mike missed the NCAA tournament for the first time.
They're 98th, by the way, Florida State.
So the point is, if there's nobody in the state hosting, there is not even that like, hey, if it's close, maybe we'll get you in because you could bus, to a team. They got a lot of work to do. And Murph's point is, I mean, you look at those American RPIs, they need Houston to keep winning and maybe get that to be a quality wins. Right now their best quality wins are Florida, 2 wins against Florida in a midweek. And then they took 1 game from Auburn and a game from UConn. That's not going to get it in. And so I agree with Murph. The RPI is good, but college baseball, to their credit in the committee, they don't just go based on RPI. They look at a lot of different things. It wasn't like UCF's RPI was the problem last year. It was the fact that it just didn't win enough, to Murph's point.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, really.
Well, I mean, at the very least, 2. If you it's like 2 out of 3, right? If you get 2 out of 3 on the road against Cincinnati, that's going to help.
Well, they have to, by the way, and they have to. It's not like, well, it'd be nice, No, they have to, because as you brought it up, Cincinnati's RPI is not very good. So if you lose that series, that hurts a lot.
Right. So Friday at 6, Saturday at 4, Sunday at noon, at least as far as we know. So that'll be UCF at Cincinnati. They come back home for the home game against Florida Atlantic on Tuesday at 6. So that's the midweek game that UCF will play. And then they have to go on the road again next weekend out to Wichita State, which is no easy shakes either. So, all right, so that's your update on baseball. I wanted to talk a little softball too, Eric Lopez. UCF dropped 2 out of 3 at home against Wichita State, including a 10-inning decision on Saturday, 6-3. But the other 2 were all decided by 1 run. UCF won 3-2 in the first game, lost 2-1 on Sunday, and this was after a midweek victory by 1 run against Jacksonville at home. This is before UCF welcomes South Florida to the UCF Softball Complex this week on the 12th, 13th, and 14th. So some more war on 4 points at stake in a race, by the way, that's already been decided thanks to UCF Baseball. Now we're just running up the score at this point. But it was a little bit uncharacteristic, Eric, or was this expected pretty much from the way because Wichita's tough, man. They've always been tough, and even though they're moving into they only moved into the league a couple years ago, they've been quite the challenge for UCF, especially at home. No.
Well, this is the second time they've played. I mean, they played last year in Wichita. Wichita swept them. They won 2 games via the walk-off and really could argue cost UCF the regular season title and maybe a berth into the NCAA tournament. They're a very good team. They have had some injuries this year, but they got a good offense. And the problem is UCF didn't swing the bats very well in the last 2, really the whole weekend. They didn't really swing the bats. They left a lot of runners on base. And that's a problem because Wichita State has players that can swing the bat and hit it out of the park in one swing and beat you. And that's what happened on Sunday. Matt Panicking, the catcher, hit one out of the yard in the 6th inning, and they won that game 2-1. On Saturday, UCF had 4 errors. So disappointing because you brought USF and Tulsa now into a pack, and now it's a 3-way tie for first place in the American. And we're going to learn about this team the next 2 weeks because they host USF this week, and then they go to Tulsa. And I think we'll know after those 6 games where UCF stands in the conference championship race as well as in the NCAA tournament picture. So, they're going to have to win these series if they want to win a championship, and they're going to have to hit better. They're just going to, and I'm not saying score 8 runs a game because that's not going to happen against these teams. You're not going to score runs against USF's pitching, who has a great pitcher in Georgina Korick, who's the co-pitcher of the year last year. You're going to have to, though, have timely hitting with runners on base and drive in the runs when those opportunities are there because they're not going to be there frequently when you're facing the pitching that you're going to face this weekend against USF. So, that's to me, that's the issue with the team there. They just didn't hit with runners on base. They had opportunities to win both of those games. They just didn't put it away. And when you keep a team like a Wichita State hanging around, they could hurt you. And that's what happened this weekend. So we'll see how they bounce back this weekend.
Funny how the schedule works out like that, right? Where you're in a 3-way tie for first with South Florida and Tulsa. And lo and behold, you're playing them back-to-back weekends, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a tough schedule. The USF, that's a huge rivalry. I think of all the War and I-4 rivalries within the sports, I think softball to me is the top one because both programs have been good at the same time consistently. Since the American was formed, either UCF or USF has won the regular season title every year except in 2017. That's why I think softball has the best rivalry of the War and I-4 sports because, for example, football, either UCF or USF every year, one of them is usually not good, except for the 1 year in 2017. So that's as an example. Baseball, I don't even think we just saw that rivalry. That's not as heated as you would think, for example. So it's going to be intense. It'll be fascinating to see Sidney Ball involved in this rivalry now against Ken Erickson. Ken Erickson's the U.S. national head coach. Sidney Ball's now an assistant on the junior U.S. national team, so there's a lot of flavor there. The pitching matchup this weekend potentially with Georgina Korick and Aaliyah White. You can make the case those are the 2 best pitchers in the American. A pitcher of the year race could have a strong statement here, whichever of those 2 pitchers has a great weekend. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be an exciting environment. It's kind of disappointing that it's in the weekend of the spring game, so there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's a very important series, and hopefully the fans come out for it, and it should be a fun softball series.
Yeah. And I'm actually trying to pull up the RPI right now. Usually we're
UCF's 38.
38. Okay, and South Florida's
30. Yeah.
And South Florida's 28. So, you get 2
big.
out of 3 here. That's a big bounce.
It's huge. And regular season. And Tulsa's in the 20s as well. So that's what I'm saying. The next 6 games are 21. Huge. I mean, if they can win both of these series, even if you win one of these series, let's say you go 3-3, whatever, that's still very good for your resume. And you would stay in the mix for the championship. If you lose these series, you're out of the conference title race, and now you're really in the bubble. So, we got to take it a game at a time. These 2 teams always plays close games. It's going to come down to timely hitting and manufacturing runs, and there'll be a lot of moves by both coaches, and it'll be a fun little atmosphere.
All right, should be good. And we've got those games coming up again at the UCF Softball Complex Friday at 5:30, Saturday at 12:30, and then Sunday at noon. And they will all be on UCF Nights TV, called by the one, the only, Eric Lopez himself. Also Saturday, like you said, spring football game. And Murph, I wanted to talk to you about this. Now, okay, dirty little secret. We all have a very complicated relationship with the concept of spring football games.
I don't think your relationship is that complicated.
No, maybe it's not. I hate it. I it's not a football game. It's a glorified practice. Please stop calling it a spring football game. It's not a spring football game. It's basically become the situation where like it just takes the edge off, right, until the summer. And but there are some interesting things that we'll be able to maybe take a look at. The game, I would say, kicks off. They're not doing a kickoff. It's at 2:30. We will see the Hall of Famers there, at least the ones who are able to attend. They're gonna have the food trucks are coming out, and they're doing the whole thing. But I'm not sure. I don't know, Murph, have you found out from Josh Heupel exactly how they're going to conduct this? I mean, like, or is it just like whatever?
they're gonna have 1s versus 1s, 2s versus 2s, 3 versus 3s. but we're not exactly sure which threes are going to be on which side, and are they going to have running clocks at points, stuff like that. But
they're doing a clock. Oh God.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm just saying we don't know much about anything other than we got first teamers versus first teamers, second teamers versus second teamers.
Well, I think the most interesting thing that we're going to actually find out is what does Brandon Wimbush look like in a UCF uniform, and he kind of came out of the woodworks today on Twitter, discussing about how excited he was for the game and just had his last spring practice ever. Yeah. There's only so much information that we can glean from this, right?
Yes. I can't wait for this question. I can't wait for this question.
What should we look for here?
Ooh.
Anything?
Look for guys to not get hurt. And that's about it.
That's about it.
That's, I mean, so
because you're not going to put anything on tape, obviously.
Well, they're not preparing for any opponent either, so it's not like they're game planning anything. Right. They're out there. It's fan service. Every spring game is fan service. You want to have a day where your fans can come out and act as if it's a normal football Saturday. They get tailgate and whatever else. So it's really for the fans more than anything else. And then you go through this practice, and when you hope no one gets hurt and the fans enjoy it, and you get out unscathed and everybody's happy. I think fans want to, know about the quarterback battle. How's that coming along? I have nothing for you. No one has anything.
I've got no. That's not true, Murph. I got the scoop.
Well, that's right. Okay, I gotta wait.
We need to know.
I got it.
Eric has scooped me on this, but I will wait. No, I will just say I think fans are interested to see what Wimbush looks like. Also, what Dylan Gabriel, the freshman from Hawaii, looks like as well.
Well, yes, this just did. You're going to see all of them on Saturday, and I'm going to go on a limb here. For the Florida A&M game, I think Mac will start, or Brandon Wimbush, or Dylan Gabriel, or Quadri Jones, and we may not know until the week of the game. That's my scoop.
That's a solid take. I think you're on safe ground there, kind of all encompassing the entire quarterback room.
He's hedged it. He's hedged his bet successfully.
And by the way, I'm going to give you another spoiler about the spring game. You're going to see a lot of great athletes out there.
Oh, man.
They look great. They look great. I mean, they look phenomenal, and they're going to look great. And every receiver that you're going to see has a potential to catch for 1,000 yards.
Oh,
every
yes.
rush for, I mean, it's going to be. We may not lose for the next decade. We may not lose.
Adrian
I want to play the
Killen
cliche game.
Yeah. Adrian Killen said last week that this offense is better than the offense last year. Like, oh, here we go. Of course it is.
Correct.
Here's what's going to happen. We look very sharp on offense. We look very aggressive on defense. Everyone seems to understand the playbook extremely well. All the new guys have come in. They've gotten acclimated to the system extraordinarily well. We're ahead of schedule on that.
Everybody's going to nitpick every route. Everybody's going to nitpick every throw, and everybody's going to jump to ridiculous conclusions that don't matter, because the real practices that matter are going to be in August. That's when we're going to learn, who's going to play, who's not going to play, and things like that. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember in the 20s, prior to the 2017 season, I don't remember anybody coming out of that spring game saying, boys, we're going undefeated. We're going to go to the Peach Bowl and claim a national title. I don't recall that coming out of that spring game. Maybe I missed it. I might have missed it, but I don't recall that coming out of the spring game. So that's my point, is that spring games are irrelevant and pointless.
Okay. Real quick, I want to know from you guys. I'm just.
By the way, you've noticed the trend. More schools are canceling those games now. Have you noticed that?
No, I didn't notice that. Well, who canceled theirs?
There's been a handful of schools that have canceled games.
The one school was it Kansas State canceled because they don't have enough players.
TCU.
TCU, that's what it was. Another purple school. Didn't have enough players. And then
how do you not have enough players?
No, no. And like there's guys who are banged up, and you don't want to put them through a spring game, so they just say, "Screw it, we're not going to do this." And then other ones have been postponed because of weather. I don't know if they've been flat out canceled.
I mean, Michigan, I don't think is having one. Yeah, Michigan, Wisconsin is not having one.
You mean to tell me Harbaugh's not having a spring game?
Well, Because it doesn't matter. That's the point.
I would have pegged him to actually host the Michigan Spring Game at like the IMG Academy or something like that.
Well, maybe that's more of the summer trip. Maybe I don't know.
Okay.
Nobody really. And I'm glad that the national media has toned down their coverage of Spring Game. If you notice, nobody even ESPN doesn't even hype up the fact they carry Spring Games anymore. I actually believe.
Unless you're watching the SEC network, in which case it's on repeat.
Those people have no life, and that's all. I remember when I went to Birmingham, and the top story in the news was how Bo Scarborough looked fantastic in the Spring Game. That's how bunch of losers they are over there in Tuscaloosa. But, look, if it was up to me, I think Spring Games across the board would just be abolished.
Yeah. Is there any way to make them better for anybody? No.
It's just fan service. That's all it is. It's for the fans to come out and say, "Hey, we're going to treat this like an actual game, and let's have fun." And you're going to see guys running up and down the field. And it's football, and it's March, and there's no real football going on. RIP AAF.
It's a hit to get you through the summer, is what it
is. The Predators starting their year. Come on.
By the way, Michigan is having a spring game. I checked it. They are actually.
Where really? They restored.
Yeah, they are. No, but they are. But TCU is not because they're injured. I will say also, I'm interested. This is what I'm most interested in. I'm most interested to see what kind of media presence there will be there for this game on Saturday, because the Magic are getting a ton of media presence for this weekend because they're in the playoffs. Correct. So you have to choose. What do you got to do?
Well, and they're playing in Toronto. They're going to play the Raptors. So how many of them are going to travel to Toronto? Things like that. I agree with you, Murph. the Magic is the big story. I'm sorry, in the community. This is a Magic town, after all. Blue, white, ignite, baby. So first time
dusted off that slogan for the first time.
Well, no, that's what they did. First time they're in the playoffs in 7 years. So, look, my whole point about the spring game, you're not going to learn anything from this. Coaches they're not going to just say, "Hey, everybody, this guy's going to start. All right, we learned a lot." No, it is what it is. You're just getting through the spring. And we make a bigger deal than it really is. Nobody's going to remember the spring game 3 months from now when we talk about the season opener against FAMU and it's "Hey, remember in the spring game when this kid left?" No, nobody's going to say it.
Let me ask you guys. This is the last question I'll ask you about the spring.
Oh, no.
No. Please don't elaborate very much on this. But you guys talk to coaches on the record, off the record all the time, right? It's what you guys do. Have any coaches at any point, past or present, when you ask them anything about the spring game, do they off the record tell you this is the dumbest freaking thing ever and I wish it would just die?
Not in those exact terms. That's all I'll say.
Okay,
no, I don't think in those terms. I think
you don't have to name names. You just give me something that they say about it. What do the coaches really think about this?
Coaches don't love the spring game. There's really no need for them to do it. They'd rather not. But it's not about them. It's for the fans.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I've heard over the years is you're hoping your players actually improve between now and when they return in the summer or whenever their report date is in August. That's it. Certain players, just because they don't look good now doesn't mean they can't improve until August. That's the thing. There's huge improvements to be made. The goal is, how do you look in August, not how you look in April.
Right.
And I think people miss the boat on that. You're not, you're going to look them out, get used to their players. I think they look for certain things, but at the end of the day, the August practices, the closed practices are the valuable things, not the spring game. The spring game is just a throwaway I think for coaches. Don't you think, Murph? All the practices they've had to get a Wimbush involved with the players and the system and the playbook, that's the value of the spring. It's not the game. It's the spring game.
Yeah, it is. It's again, it's not. I think again, you talked about it's not a game. Okay, it's not a game. We're not talking about a game at all. We're talking about practice. Practice, not a game.
We're talking about practice, man.
Not a game.
Not a game.
Not a game. Not a game.
About
practice. Doing a quick Google search. So I know that I think Iowa State. Yes, Iowa State is skipping their spring game.
By the way, I miswrote. That was last year's spring. They all canceled it. It was not this year. My bad.
Let me tell you how much of a disaster that's going to be for the entire economy of the state of Iowa that the Iowa State spring game is not happening.
Hey, aim's a big deal. So yeah, but you don't have to have you can have you can skip a spring game and still have a football program. That's actually a real thing.
Really?
True.
Oh,
that's true. Gosh, this is a really cynical show today.
Well, no, it's cynical. No. It's only cynical about things that don't matter, and otherwise, like you're cynical about UCF basketball. That's because you were unrealistic to start. Correct.
Well, I you know me. I like to play devil's advocate here.
Boy. Grinding my gears.
No. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, my thing is like I've said this also about like people who freak out about like high school commits. Is like if a guy doesn't want to be here, go. Go somewhere.
I think I saw someone.
Happy.
I saw someone. Was it? I don't know. I think it was about Terrell Allen transferring. I saw someone comment. I wish players had more loyalty. I'm like, go away.
Block that person on Twitter immediately. I mean, that's man. Are you serious? Like, what are we talking about?
But that's that is not a singular thought. Like that's most like that's a big portion of fans across college sports think that when players transfer, like they're screwing over the program.
Give me a break. But
nobody has a problem when they come to your program. When they
exactly. Right. Well, here's the thing. Like, we as regular students, like we all went to UCF. If we eventually wanted to transfer from, UC at some point in our college career from, as journalism and radio TV majors to another school, like there's no barriers there. But just because you happen to play a sport as an extracurricular activity, suddenly it's an affront to all that is good with America that you decide to transfer. What the hell are we talking about? I mean,
sports.
My biggest problem is with the NCAA. Like, they're trying to get rid of the grad transfer, which to me is the most idiotic thing of them all. Like, if you did your work, if you graduated and you still have a year of eligibility, wasn't that student have a right to go somewhere else to improve their work environment, right? I mean, isn't that the whole point of going to college is trying to help you set up for your future job? I mean, that's why I just have a problem with the hypocrisy of the NCAA. Like, you're trying to get rid of the grad transfers, like they did their work. So I don't have a problem if a kid wants to transfer and is trying to go to a situation that's better for himself.
Breaking news, NCAA exploring stupid idea that should be shot into the sun. Anyway.
Exactly.
All right. Let's wrap this thing up here. Murph, what are you working on this week? Well, what am I talking? No, you're not working at all this week.
I'm not working on anything, Jeffrey.
Taking a vacation.
What are we gonna do? Like, you're gonna come back and like, there maybe we'll have a basketball team. I don't know.
Oh, please, Jeffrey, come on, man! You're just the worst.
I'm just really, you guys.
Just the worst. I don't even know if it's a vacation since I'm only be gone for 48 hours. But
it's not a vacation unless you completely turn off your Twitter notifications.
No, I can't do that because sports. But we'll see. And hey, here's what I'm doing this weekend. I'm getting in Sunday night. I get back in from San Antonio on Sunday night in Orlando, and I am covering up my eyes and my ears and everything, every sense organ I have, to make sure that I don't get any spoilers about the Game of Thrones season premiere Sunday night. Oh, be still my beating heart. I cannot wait. Oh my God. I spit. This is not a joke. So we went out to practice today, talked to Josh Heupel for 10 minutes. I came back and HBO is airing a season of Game of Thrones per day during this week. I literally sat here all day and wrote and the others, and just went about my day. Meanwhile, the entire season 3 of Game of Thrones was playing in the background. I just finished the entire season as this podcast began. It was a great 10 hours. I have no regrets.
I just can't, man. I just can't do it.
It's fantastic.
I don't know. Maybe one day. Elo, what you got?
Wow. Well, on Black.
I don't know how you're gonna follow that up.
I don't know. No. Game of Thrones for whatever there for me there, but I will say there's going to be content up on blackandgoldbanneret.com about the inductees, right? Like some stuff on Kime, some stuff on Alini Reyes. We've already got stuff on O'Leary.
Yep.
We got Jerry O'Neill's thoughts on Brandon Marsh. We're going to have all that. All right. Hopefully by the time this is airing, I will be at the Hall of Fame ceremony on Friday. And then I'll be calling the games on Saturday and Sunday with UCF USF. And then in between all that, watching every minute of the NBA playoffs, which includes our very own Orlando Magic, ladies and gentlemen, as I root for them.
I have to correct you on something, Eric Lopez. What you mean is the 2019 Southeast Division champion.
That's right, baby. Put the banner up. The banner's coming up, baby. Opening night next year. It's going to be emotional. It's been a long time since we've had a banner up in this city.
Well, I will say this. I like watching the NBA, but I have not watched the Magic at all this year, except for their last two games, their last home game, and then the game in Boston. And that game in Boston was a fun watch. That was as much fun as I had watching a Magic game since the Stan Van Gundy, Dwight Howard days. Just the brand of basketball.
They played hard.
They played
well.
Really
Steve
well.
Steve Clifford's done a heck of a job, and they actually
Terrence
drew
Ross, man. Woo.
Yeah, Ross has been great. Vucevic has been great. They're going to play Toronto, which has a history of choking in the playoffs. So I'm actually optimistic that the Magic could push this at worst to 6 games, maybe. So I can get
interesting storylines in that series too. By the way, Eric Lopez, because Ross was in Toronto. Is that right?
Yep. He was part of the trade when they did Ibaka to Toronto.
Trade, right. So yeah,
that's correct. For more Magic coverage, check out our friends at SB Nation at Orlando Pinstripe Post. They will be covering the playoffs there as we cross promote our SB Nation's friends there. But I'm looking forward to it. I'll be covering the Magic there. I'll be looking at the dates, going to the home games, hoping we get 3 home games so I get 3 paychecks out of it. It's a beautiful thing.
That'll work. Yeah, and you can follow. By the way, you can follow them at Orlando Pinstriped Post. It's past tense. Pinstriped Post, and make sure you also follow them as well. Managing editor Mike Calley, Will Ogburn, and Zach Oliver. I mean,
Zachary. Zach's a good guy.
Zach is awesome. I mean, make sure you give Zach a follow. He is, by the way, at I'm pulling up his Twitter handle right now. Zach Oliver NBA, ZACH Oliver NBA. And
who would have thought? Who would have thought the Magic would be in the playoffs and LeBron James? Huh?
I know. And
hold it up.
Hey, who would have thought that? I mean, Orlando Magic would be in the playoffs, but Magic Johnson was not. What?
Right. Okay. I think we all know who the Laker fan is here. We all okay. Ha. Yes, my franchise is a tire fire. I get it. Thank you.
Listen. Welcome to being the rest of the NBA for once, Laker fan. Okay.
The Schadenfreude runs deep, doesn't it?
It very much. You're speaking to a longtime New Jersey Nets fan, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't talk to me about dumpster fires. I will tell. There was a dumpster fire out in the Meadowlands for about 3 decades that I had to deal with. By the way, OPP Magic blog on Twitter, by the way, for our friends at the Orlando Pinstriped Post. We also have Jeremy Brenner is doing a little spring game preview. 3 things to watch for the UCF football spring game. Make sure you check that out. And also,
we didn't do a very good job promoting that at all, as we derided the spring game entirely.
Listen. This is the challenge for Jeremy as he will actually try and convince us of why
excited.
We should be.
He's going to be he's excited. He's looking forward to he's going to break down every snap. Him and Zach Goodall, I'm sure, will break down every snap of that spring game and break it down.
And also Luke Saris is going to be looking at the returning production for UCF men's basketball and examining. He'll actually be giving us his way too early projection of a starting 5 for UCF men's basketball.
Jeffrey, I can't wait for Jeff's reaction to this.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we were texting each other today, and for a minute there, I was like, way too early starting 5. Like, we don't have 5 players. What are you talking about? But anyway,
God darn it, Jeffrey.
I know. All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. Don't forget to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all of that and plenty more. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret and Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon, Eric at Eric Lopez Elo, Brian at Spokes_Murphy, Luke at Luke Saris SBN, Jeremy Brenner at Jeremy Brenner, and Zach Goodall at Zach Goodall as well. By the way, NFL draft coming up pretty soon, so we're going to be leaning on Zach a lot more in the next couple weeks, and that should be a lot of fun. He gives great
NFL draft. Gonna have to get him on the pod.
Got to get him on the pod. before the NFL draft to talk some UCF stuff and just pick his brain because, like, I don't know, I get way too excited to talk to Zach Goodall about NFL draft stuff. Anyway, let's get out of here. For Eric and Brian, I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. The Magic are in the playoffs. Make sure you watch them against Toronto. Enjoy the weekend, folks. We'll catch you next week.